Qual que é o melhor lugar, você sabe? Tem aqui, ó, balcão, frisa ou plateia. A plateia tá sendo mais caro, por R$5 de diferença. Será que esse é o melhor lugar?
Esse é o mais caro, esse é o mais caro.
É balcão. Achou? Peraí, rapidão. Plateia, balcão e frisa. Deixa eu ver.
Não sei o que é. Plateia é embaixo. Eu só não sei o que ele vai avaliar como balcão. Acho que é essa atrás, essas laterais.
Vou pôr plateia, então.
Acho que a gente sempre...
Olha, os outros... Não, tá. Não. E aí os
Você não veio pra entrar em casa?
Cadê aquela régua nova preta que essa sala? Então, ela não funcionou. Funcionou sim, continuou. A gente tem que hoje não conseguiu, Fê. Comprei
Yes, it's very good for that. That's why I use
a gente da receita? Alguém tá precisando? Não. Aí que ela a gente tá no seu nome. Ela não te decide. Eu não vi essa, eu vi ela indo. Toda vez que eu monto o tripé, eu lembro do que você falou, que o professor falou.
Bem, qual que é a sua senha? É 1, 2, 3, 4.
Tá, embaixo tem aí. Obrigado.
Tem também. Tá.
Deixa eu te falar uma coisa rapidinho. Por que você está falando desse negócio? A gente tem que a gente consegue fazer. Porque não tem se você quiser. Depois eu preparei ele. Não vai tomar 5 minutos.
Pessoal, como vocês estão de tempo esses três? Posso estar pedindo 5 minutos antes de começar. Ele está acabando de fazer a fala, pode fazer antes?
Faz uma perguntinha aí, pessoal. Responde no vídeo e eu já
Já? Se apresenta para ele.
Tá bom.
Vamos lá. Não, peraí, 5 minutos com esse moço. Eu já perguntei.
Corinthians é mesmo o time dos milagres, está fazendo o Valdívia e o Santos jogarem de volta.
A transmissão já está from that abrir aqui. Ok. Just a quick question.
Não, eu também. Oi? É. Sim, está funcionando, Tati? Se está funcionando. O dia tá?
Tenta usar ela mais cedo.
Eu acho, ou então, se você puder, ficar vendo se funciona, tá? Mas aí é melhor você sentar na cadeira, né?
Pode deixar esse banco também.
Não aconselho aqui. Pega uma daquelas conversinhas, é melhor uma. Você não quer conversinha?
Mas pra trás não.
Aí eu te mando igual? É, opa. Vocês já levaram esse bebê pra casa? Não, ainda não.
Ainda tem um bichinho aqui. Gabriel, tá rolando um anúncio do SBT dando os parabéns.
Pra eu ver.
Pra Rede Globo.
SBT sem SBT.
Silvio Silvio, né?
Sabe como chama isso? Síndrome de Estocolmo.
Não, é que o Silvio é um pouco.
Não, o Silvio é um povo que sofre de síndrome de Estocolmo. Se você for levar em consideração a quantidade publicitária que a Globo arremata em relação aos outros veículos, é síndrome de Estocolmo.
O intervalo daquela novela Querida Brasil custava R$500 milhões. E sem negociação. Porque às vezes eles têm uns pacotes, uns negócios assim. O dessa novela era R$500 milhões.
Não, porque tava 400, era 30 segundos, não é? R$500 milhões.
Não sei, o professor que falou, eu não averiguei.
Então, tava com as tabelas de mídia ainda, né? Só teve uma
Super Bowl.
mas teve assim, uns anos uma queda considerável, por exemplo.
Vocês não viram do intervalo de transmissão da TV drone, cara. É um valor assim.
Pois é, é um choquito. Um choquito, um isqueiro e um maço de Marlboro na inserção.
Cauê, que legal! Bom, eu sou a Patrícia, eu trabalho, sou voluntária na Actantes, que é uma organização de defesa da liberdade da internet e da privacidade. O Peter está aqui porque ele veio participar da CryptoRave, que acontece de sexta para sábado agora. São 24 horas de debate, discussão e oficina sobre esses dois temas. E aí a gente achou legal aproveitar que está aqui para conversar com vocês. Eu acho que a gente podia deixar aberta a roda, vocês podiam se apresentar, a gente vai fazer em inglês, porque senão a gente não consegue falar. Vocês podiam se apresentar e fazer as perguntas e a gente vai tocando até acabar quando terminar. Tá bom? Quem começa? Tchan, tchan. Yes, please. You're going to make it very loose.
Yeah.
Okay?
I'm just following the flow.
Okay.
Whatever happens, happens.
You create the flow.
E por conta do streaming, faz também em inglês e português?
Não, a gente avisou para o pessoal do streaming que ia ter em inglês. Se você quiser ajudar a translação e fazer a pergunta em português e em inglês, ajuda o povo que está ouvindo.
We can do it Norwegian. What?
Norwegian? Anyone?
Swedish, Danish, Finnish, German, French. No, okay.
He was asking if he might do the questions in Portuguese also to help the people that are watching the stream. I said yes, okay.
Whatever, I'm fine with whatever.
English and Portuguese.
The more languages, the better.
They speak Klingon.
Klingon? I don't know that one.
but you speak almost like Klingon here. So sorry.
The guy speaks Swedish when it comes to belief.
Swedish is very close to Klingon.
Okay, come on, let's go with you.
So you talked recently about how the pirates lost the big fight. Yes, I understood it was against the industry of writing industry, and I'd like to know what's your big fight today.
Well, I think that I'm moving on to the next fight because I think it's important not to fight for a lost cause. So rather, I'm looking at what's going to happen in like 20 years, what the problem's going to be, and they are not only internet related; they're rather related to society in general because internet is merging with the normal society. So we're not going to talk about internet stuff anymore. We're going to talk about normal society as we did before. So for instance, when we talk about what's happening in the car industry, you see that we're going to have self-driving cars. We're very certain that they are going to replace other cars. We're not going to have drivers in the future. We're going to have cars that just go where we tell them to. But the problem is that we have all of these monitoring laws. We're going to be able to track everyone wherever they are all the time in the cars they are. If we have systems in place that makes it illegal to go to certain websites, those laws are also going to be applied to certain addresses in GPS systems. So we're not going to be allowed to go to a physical place because everything is merging. So I think that today a lot of people are considering internet to be some sort of playground, and it's been going on for quite a while that it's entertainment. But we're moving everything to use internet as a backbone for communication. So that's kind of my fight, to find out what's going to happen and then make sure that I have a positive view and positive ideas on how to make sure that we're not going to end up as fucked as we are today.
How fucked are we today?
I think we're way more fucked than we think. The big issue that I see is that if you go back and see what happened with Eastern Germany, they knew that Stasi, this organization, were spying on them, and they knew that they were recording things about them. They had like books about them and had spies everywhere, and they could see the spies. So they were careful with what they talked about, and that was a big problem because they did what we call self-censorship. They didn't talk about certain things, and that's really bad. The problem is today that we know that we're being spied on, but we don't see the people spying on us, so we don't self-censor, which is also a problem. And all of this information will not be used until it's too late for us to back out. There's this old saying like, first they came for the communists, and I was not a communist, so I didn't care. Then they came for the Jews, but I was not a Jew, so I didn't care. Then they came for the next. And now it's just us left, So I'm scared of that. Like it's when we realize what we've done right now, it's going to be too late to back out. So, and we're way past that possibility. I think that we can maybe limit the damages, but we can't win that fight. So we have to make sure that we go for the next fight and win that one instead.
Yesterday, you've posted on a blog of the, I don't know exactly how to say it, it's Emilie's?
Yes, very good, very good. So we're almost speaking Swedish now.
And you just ended your project that you were working on because you told that all the others apps that try to make some private communications fail to have some users and lost their fight against maybe WhatsApp and Facebook Messenger. And do you think privates don't have this any appeal in society even after Sunde?
Like who got fired after the Snowden revelations? I don't think there's a lot of people that got fired. Even though I know that we talk a lot about privacy and those things, there's no real change. In the European Union, for instance, there's been a lot of talk about privacy, integrity, and all of these things, but there's not a lot of new changes going the right way in terms of protecting our privacy. It's actually going the other way around with TTIP and all of these agreements coming, which is going to basically ruin that as well. So we have, on one side, there is this positive view of privacy is important, anonymity is important, integrity is important, but no one is really doing anything. It's just a lot of talk. And then on the other side, you have people in technology, which try to make technology that will kind of surpass the politics. The problem is that I don't want to hide. We shouldn't hide. We should rather make sure that we don't have to hide. And also the technologists are making software for other technology savvy people. So we have a new class society basically where people that are educated understand how to be protected and the uneducated classes will not be protected. And for me, that is not really fair. So the idea we had with Hemlis was that we wanted to make an app for everyone. But it's also impossible to get people to move from WhatsApp and from Kik and from all of these other messengers because they're good enough. Everyone is already there, and there has not been a problem. And that's the biggest problem, is that there have not been this massive leak or this massive problem for individual users. And until that happens, they're just going to use the data for something we don't really know what it is. And when it's too late, then it's fucked. So it's impossible to get people to really move to another system. It's too late for that. So, and also for Hemlis, we spent a lot of time on finding, making the best technology that we could, and we don't have the money to do it anymore because we spent the money we got. And our competitors had like $60 million or whatever in investment. The smallest one I've seen from one of the investors, and we got $100,000 something. So the level is very different. Yes.
When you start, do you see you mentioned that there were competition with, sorry, the name of the app,
Hemlis.
Hemlis. Is it pronounce right?
Sorry?
Did it pronounce it right? Did it pronounce it right?
Yes, Hemlis. Yes.
Well, you mentioned there are competitors in the market. So you can see Facebook Messenger, WhatsApp, and Viber.
Yeah.
But none of them have the same purpose. An encrypted message. What app do you use to have the same functions of things?
Well, I use normal Jabber XMPP clients on my phone with OTR, but it's very ugly. It's hard to install. It works only on certain phones, so it only works for the people that are, willing to put that effort into that, which is opposite to like WhatsApp and Kik, which just works very well. There are also some other people that are trying to do good technology and then making it look better, which is a positive thing that we found out. It's like Signal and Telegram and all of these other guys that are doing better than WhatsApp and so on in terms of protecting users that are very interesting. So I'm hoping they will be more successful in actually gaining a user base, which is the hardest thing. Like making the technology is not that hard. Making it attractive for users is really hard, but actually making users switch to another platform is near impossible today. Like even if you made something which is 10 times better than Facebook, people wouldn't move because you don't have users.
Can I ask a little bit more about your new fight? You talked about your new fight in the locations. Can you explain a bit more about what you are doing exactly, and how can you win this fight when the other side seems to be so powerful and more in control than ever?
Like my thing has always been like trying to make people talk about things and trying to make people take a stance on something. I don't want to tell them what to think. I want them to think for themselves and realize that I'm right. It's always been a thing. So I'm using a lot of humor and art and things, and I'm doing a lot of political stunts. And I don't talk about all of them because some of them are really stupid and some are really clever, and it's always better to have lots of different people releasing things than just one or two people doing that. So I'm working on some art projects that will be released under my name or under an art group that I'm part of, because I think that we have to have some sort of spin on that comes from not just the political or activist scene. It has to be like broader than that. Then I'm working with lots of organizations as both helping them in terms of thinking about how their technology would work, like as an advisor, and then I go around the world talking about things like this at conferences. And there's also this thing that I have a lot of attention from, especially the tech press. I want to talk because in the tech press there's not a lot of, even though it seems like the most fun area to work in, there's not a lot of people that go kind of in the gray zones of things. So I get a lot of attention, and I use that attention to talk about why we should think about, educating people, protecting people, and affairs and so on.
Do you plan to join WikiLeaks, as you said in the past, and maybe do you still think about joining a political party, maybe a party?
So people are kind of upset about it, but I don't like the Pirate Party, for instance. And the reason is that they generally don't have a broad sense of what society should look like. And I think that's unfair, because if we have a parliamentary system as it looks like today, you have to care about all parts of it. Maybe you could find something else, some other parliamentarian system that would work if you have just a few causes you care about. But as it is today, I think it's shameful even to take votes from people only based on a few things. Like if you vote for the Pirate Party in one country that only have the stance of like freedom of speech and information, which is totally fine. You don't know what you're getting when it comes to immigration or to schools or healthcare and all of these things, which is totally not right. In some countries, the Pirate Party has been doing better, like in Iceland, they actually have a broad sense of all of these topics, which also makes them more popular. They're holding it like 30%, so it's the biggest party in Iceland. And in Germany, they've had some other discussions. So different political parties, Pirate parties, goes in different ways. So it also shows that there's a lot of fights internally in the pirate movement, or whatever you want to call it, about what they are. And I think that they have to sort that out before they can actually be a real political party. It's good that they're making attention and making people talk about issues, which is important for me. But it's also like it's an ethical thing for me that you take about votes that could be used for better. I entered the European Union elections last year for the Pirate Party in Finland, but that was for the reason that in the European Union elections you vote for a certain person. So people that voted for me, and I was very open with my political background, with my interests are and what I think about animal rights, feminism, and freedom of speech, all of these topics which are important to me, and also so they would understand, like, if you vote for me, this is what you get. Not only this, but everything. So my deal with Pirate Party was that I will be independent, but I have to run for a party. So basically, that's what I did. But for me, it wasn't important to get into office. I didn't want to win. I just wanted all of the other parties to have to take a stance on certain issues. And because I'm kind of a weird person in all of this, like I'm coming from this kind of crazy art hacker tech community, which they're not used to in the political world, especially not in Finland, which is very conservative. I made a lot of headlines. And then they asked the other politicians, what do you think about these issues? And that was the thing I wanted, like they have to take a stance. And then they have to think about why they're saying what they're saying. So I don't think I'm ever going to join a political party and run, because also there's a lot of responsibility that I don't want.
And WikiLeaks?
WikiLeaks, I work with WikiLeaks. In general, I support WikiLeaks, but I don't think there's a lot of things coming out of WikiLeaks anymore. And I think also it's bad that we don't have more diversity, that we have like single points of failures all the time. Like we only have one leaking platform, we only have one file sharing platform, we only have one of each. We should have lots of them. So I think that if someone wants to like work with leaking, they should rather get the technology from WikiLeaks and then make their own platform and be kind of more specialized on certain topics. Like if you are interested in financial leaks, that might be your area of expertise. So rather start one site or a system that's focused on that. And because because I'm really scared of this centralization. And we in the kind of the activist scene, we're always complaining about centralization, about Facebook, Twitter, all of these just single points of failure, but we do the same. And that's my biggest objection, is like we should listen to our own kind of thoughts we have on the subject.
About, have you seen something before?
Yes.
Somewhere in the movie you get the impression that every child realized that no matter how technical ingenious you were, you wouldn't be able to protect yourself because the state is so powerful. And then it's when he makes the move to do the openings. And it seems to me that he thinks that you're gonna have laws.
Yeah.
In the way that it's a bigger system, you're gonna have laws, enforcement, and ways of fiscalizar, I don't know the word. Você tem que ter lei para ver o que os governos fazem. Accountability.
Yes.
At the same time, we are having big troubles with democracy. You know, in the same film, you see the justice of the United States not functioning. So this is a paradox. We got to have laws, and then the laws we have don't function.
No.
So what?
No, the problem is that globalization, to some extent, and the internet part of that, has destroyed kind of accountability. So if we're being spied on by the United States in our country outside, there's no one who's accountable for what they're doing. So they have the rights, they have possibilities and means to spy on us, but we don't have the right to actually tell them to stop. So there's no democracy in that. This might be like an offshoot, but there are some groups in Africa that are demanding voting rights in the US. And the reason is that what happens in the US when who they elect as a politician, like the president, has more influence on their local economy and the local democracy than whom they vote for in their own country. And that's, for me, it's a sign that we have a huge problem with accountability. And accountability is, it's for the government, should be accountable for stuff, and we're kind of mixing that up like Snowden is over. I think he's talking about like accountability for people as well, not just the government, which I think is the wrong way to look at it, because we don't owe the government anything. They owe us a lot. So the state should protect us. We should not have to protect ourselves against them.
Yes.
And as soon as we're working in that way, which is why I don't like that we have to do encrypted services, because we should not have to. We should be protected from having to do that. Maybe for other reasons, like there will always be criminals and so on. But the problem is that the criminals are the government today.
May I? Again? Do you think legal streaming services have finally become an alternative to bring content to users in a way that they can pay for? And at the same time, artists complain about the absence of transparency of these services and say that their songs and videos are played tons of times and they don't get paid proportionally.
Yes.
How do you see the future of content distribution and for the artist's income?
Well, the problem, like, if you take all of the streaming services, especially for music, it's yet again a centralized system, and most of them are owned by record companies that are, we fought the record companies and we kind of started winning that war against the record companies having this control. Because it's not about money. The question is not about money at all, because the music industry and the movie industry is thriving. They're making more money than they've ever done before. They're growing each year. Maybe they're growing less than they used to. And that's their objective. Like, they're objecting that instead of growing 15% this year, we only grew 12%. Like, it's some sort of God-given right to grow a certain amount of percentage here in profits. The problem we have that I see is that we had this fight, and then people found that Spotify and other streaming services that kind of solved the issue, because we could pay the artist some sort of money and it would be fine. And people are not against paying artists for content or whatever you want to call it, for creativity, but that was never an issue. It's just the issue in the press. It was not an issue in the actual physical world. If you look at the numbers, musicians were making more money than ever before, and less of the money went to the record companies. But now with Spotify, the big owners are the record companies, and what they're doing is that they're making really bad deals with their artists so that Spotify can keep more money, because they will in turn get that money. Their licenses between Spotify and also with other streaming services are really bad for the artists, but really good for the record companies. So they're again putting themselves in a central position and controlling our culture. So for me, it's not about the money at all. And when you have the topic and the discussion about money and how to distribute the money, you're avoiding kind of the idea of why we have culture. For me, it's to spread the culture and to make sure that people have access to the information and to the culture. And then, yes, we should find a way to make sure that people have the money to do it. But taking the old way, because someone is complaining too much about their role being kind of lost, and caring too much and catering too much to their needs is not the right way to go forward. So if we cut the head off like the record companies, get rid of them, and maybe we find like state sanctions, state-funded ways to support the art community, and other ways, like we'd be a bit more creative on that side, there wouldn't be an issue. And yet again, there's actually no issue when it comes to finance anyhow, because most artists need money from live gigs or stuff like that. And like recently, like 2 years back maybe, I was using Spotify, and one day a lot of the songs that I listened to were gone. They were not in my playlist anymore. And the reason is that for some reason, very untransparent, the artist or the record company or Spotify or someone in that chain decided these songs are not available anymore on Spotify. And I did not have a backup of these songs as MP3s because I started using Spotify way too much, and all of a sudden I can't find these songs anymore because they're not on the file sharing networks because people trust Spotify. And that is what happens with all of these centralized services, that you move away from having kind of control over your culture and that some central group decide what's okay and what's not. And it was also the case that in Germany and in the UK, certain songs were censored because they had words that were not allowed in Germany, which is also censoring against the artist. So we think we're helping the artist, but we're actually fucking up both freedom of expression, freedom of information, and kind of lose control in culture. And that goes for everything that's being centralized and controlled by these corporations. Sorry for the long answer.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Luis from IDG Brazil. Still about streaming, do you see any value in services like Popcorn Time? Do you see that they are like the future of what Pirate Bay used to do?
I think it's awesome with Popcorn Time because they're trying to take the next step. I'm not sure if it works or not. I know that they're having a lot of legal trouble, but I think that it's great that someone else is taking the fight and that kind of attention from Pirate Bay goes to Popcorn Time instead, because they're actually doing something new and something more interesting. It's also fun to see that the laws in Europe have not kind of catched up, because it's in most of Europe, I don't know the situation here, it's legal to stream for some reason. So you can stream whatever content you want. It will not be legal, but if you would save them, which happens when you stream, anyhow, but just not in the view of the legal system, that's not an issue. So they kind of took the step forward, and then the law is falling behind, and people are really upset because they can't control it. So I wouldn't say it's the future or anything, because I think that there's a lot of things that could happen and should happen, but I think that it's at least something started moving again. With Pirate Bay became so huge and so like a default system for file sharing that no one made anything new and fresh. And it didn't happen until people complained too much about Pirate Bay, and Pirate Bay started doing a lot of really embarrassing and boring stuff, and then didn't fight anymore. Then people got so upset that they actually started doing new things. So I'm really happy if that happens more, and people stop trusting like one central location more. So Popcorn Time is good, and you can have your own installation and your own server and all of that. So I'm happy about the movement, but more is needed.
What do you think is going to happen to the peer-to-peer networks?
Well,
if you have Netflix, if you have Popcorn Time.
The thing is that if you look at
the world right now, the tech industry is the biggest industry in the world. So Apple just like some months ago, they became twice as big as the second biggest company in the world. So they're twice as big as Exxon, which is the biggest oil company in the world. So the value of Apple is twice, and most of that is based on information and most sales of different stuff. And you have Google and you have all of these others, and they are going into every technology kind of industry. So they're moving towards media, they're moving towards cars, they're moving towards everything that's going to be digital or is already digital. And they have a lot of money, and they will try, even though they have their slogans of not being evil and so on, they will of course try to make a really good kind of political situation, legal framework for themselves. And that's going to be a problem, because if we puzzle all of the pieces together, we see the monitoring we have, we see the censorship coming, we see these new laws like TPP, that we tried stopping when they were called SUPA, PIPA, ACTA, whatever names they had, and just now transformed into the next agreement, which will pass. And we're not fighting that as much as we fought the other ones, because we're kind of tired in the activist scene. So we just, I'm really scared that there will be a really small kind of elite class that understand how to falsher and have peer-to-peer. And there will be kind of the tech elite class that will be doing that, and they will not, since they don't have an issue, they will not make new technology available or for the general public, because it's not a problem for them. So I'm really scared of I don't think that we're going to have peer-to-peer in like 10 years if we don't stop anything right now. Not because it's impossible, because it's going to be like you're going to be totally screwed, because everyone's going to know that you're downloading something, and Google or someone is going to come after you instead of Hollywood.
Do you know people who run RP now?
No, not now.
And have you keep or still have any contact with Frederick and Gottfried?
I'm in some contact with Gottfried, not very much, but some, but not with Frederick at all. So, I don't like him. He doesn't like me either, so that's fine. Yes.
I have three questions. I make one after one after. One of the last experience that you make is the platform Flat, all right?
The last
Flat, that's good money.
Flatter.
Yeah, Flatter, yeah.
Yes. And it makes the WikiLeaks survive for a time, and now it looks like it's the future for the new journalism, like for some money survive for these new web blogs and things like that. How is going this experience?
Well,
have you
so Flatter is it's going. It's a little bit tricky. It's going well in certain areas. It's going really badly in others. When we started Flatter, it was a very different time on the internet, because everything was more or less decentralized. It was before Facebook and Twitter and all of these centralized internet. So people had their own blogs, so they could put Flatter buttons on their blogs and so on. But now everyone is using Facebook or some centralized service, and they don't want external partners that have anything to do with money. So if you have an app in your iPhone, Apple wants 30% of all of the money that goes through. And it's technically impossible to integrate that with Flatter, so we can't be on those platforms that they don't want us to be there, because they rather want us to use their payment services. So in like podcasting and other areas where it's less centralized, Flatter is working really well, and it's growing a little bit all the time, but it's not growing like super much like we would hope it would be. And that is because of the change time of the internet. We are working on some projects that we hopefully will kind of surpass the technological boundaries that we have. But I'm not sure what's going to happen. But for us, it's like something we really fight heavily for. Like, we really want this system to become, or a similar system. It doesn't have to be ours. Google is doing something called Google Contributor, which is based on the ideas of Flatter. And something needs to happen in that field, and it's for us like money is being centralized just as every other information, and it's being controlled more and more. So we're going to have issues with that as well. And if we don't have like a third party that takes care of money, and we have only Apple and Google and these guys doing it, we're going to have the problem with financial censorship as we've had with other types of censorship as well. And then again, we need to find ways of putting money into the internet and into the cultural sector. So for us, it's important to test a new way instead of just trying to find ways to take the old and put them on the new.
Questions about money in the internet. What do you think about the Bitcoin experience? Because was the year past, as far as I think it was one way to make more quality the economy, virtual economy. But it looks like that we have who is rich in real, is rich in virtual with Bitcoin also. So, what do you think about the future about the Bitcoin?
I'm very split on this topic of Bitcoin. I like the idea that we can finally circumvent, because I have a lot of friends that work as activists, and they are depending on Bitcoin for money transfers of stuff and buying things online because they don't have any other access to funds, or they can't use money because it's censored, or they're in countries where they don't have payment services and so on. So for them, it's really good. But then you have the other guys who are the main users of it, who don't want to pay taxes or for other reasons want to use Bitcoin. So there has the drawbacks of that, because you don't have transparency. Well, you have transparency, but you don't have accountability, and you don't have like the obligations as you have in a normal financial system. So if you don't pay taxes on the money, we're going to have other issues like, yet again, we don't have healthcare and so on. So that's my objection. Maybe someone can solve that somehow technically. I don't see how that's going to happen, because it's just too easy to be egotistical in that environment. But I'm happy to see that there are movements towards a digital economy as well that is not based on the same old players centralizing money and being able to censor. But it's really impossible to say what's going to happen with any virtual currency.
Other questions about the political party. Look like the Podemos in Spain had a lot of influence about that come from pirate party.
Yeah.
Like crowdfund sources to finance the campaign, online decisions, things like that. You think the goals of the ideas in the Pirate Party is doing well by them?
Well, yet again, I have this split feeling about the Pirate Party. I think that they are, most of them are good guys that want well. They want to do good, and they think that they can work in a political party to do that. And maybe they can if they expand it. But I think it would be better if they pushed other political parties to have to take a stance and show what kind of agenda they have. It's going to be maybe 10, 15 years or more until the Pirate Party is like a mature political party that can actually function. Maybe in certain cases, like in Iceland, where it's very mature, it can function already. But you need to come to a certain level of expertise and professionality and responsibility taking, which I don't see that the Pirate parties have. And it's not that they don't want to have them, it's just that they don't really see the full picture of what they're going to have to do when they get power, if they get power. I'm not really sure if that's your question. But
So asking about Podemos in Spain.
Which is the
Podemos is party in Spain. It's like Syriza in Greece.
Okay. I don't know too much about that, but when it comes to Syriza, I'm happy about the movement there, because they're at least taking stands against the current situation. Like they're trying to do something else and trying to go outside of like the rule set, which I think is really important that political parties do. That they should just accept status quo, because we need to update democracy. We need to challenge democracy, and especially the whole concept of democracy is like it's just the least bad system we have for governing. And a lot of countries are like saying like, if we get democracy, everything will solve itself. But that also means that we're not focusing on finding something better than democracy, because it's like this high goal that everyone has, and it's also an impossible goal to ever reach. So we're kind of screwing ourselves over there. And I think that the movements even though a lot of these parties are coming from the background that everything is just totally screwed up and we can throw everything out, it's a good thing sometimes to burn the old just to get space for the new. So that movement is good.
You said that peer-to-peer networks can be, peer-to-peer can end in 10 years. People do certain things. You said that Google, instead of Hollywood, can come after peer-to-peer.
Yeah.
First question, how? And second question, what do we lose if we lose peer-to-peer networks?
Well, first thing is that, for instance, Google, they're building big fiber networks. They're building mobile networks, and they're really interested in becoming big internet operators. And that's gonna, in turn, mean that they're gonna do deals with certain companies in order to not be sued or whatever. But that's not only Google, it's also Facebook and other companies are into that scene. So we're centralizing all parts of technology to very few companies. So that's how it will happen. And I think that if we lose peer-to-peer, it's really hard to say, to kind of grasp what's going to happen, because we're going to come to first time in history to a place where we basically have no other alternative besides the only market there is. Because otherwise we had a black market, but when the internet gives you the possibilities of doing like a lot of cool things, like we have all of these freedoms, but we're using them to limit freedoms instead. So I think that when we're in the position that we don't have peer-to-peer anymore, we also kind of drop the ball on having other alternative markets. So it's really hard to grasp what's going to happen, but we're going to be in a worse situation than in kind of these Minority Report movies and 2001 and everything with monitoring.
Do you mind if I maybe some questions about the time you spent in prison? It's okay. Has life in prison changed you in any way? What have you learned from the time you spent there? And have you spent your time there offline? And if yes, it was really difficult for you?
Well, there was 3 questions. I didn't change a lot. I dropped to 69 kilos. They didn't give me good food. I didn't sue the government, but I filed complaints about the government, and I'm still fighting those fights because it's really, really slow. What I learned is basically that we have an underclass society of people who are trapped in criminality because they have no other option. I kind of knew that already, but I met the people and I spoke to the people and I understood the situation they have. And I think I'm more firm in my beliefs about the problems we have in society, and I understand them much better. And then I think maybe even I feel like I was very naive before about how the world actually works for the people that are part of the underclass society.
Can you give an example?
For
Not
instance,
about a person actually, but about the situation.
For instance, I can give examples about people. There was one person that I met. I called him 39 because he had been to prison 39 times. And he was best friends with 41. You can ask yourself why. He was called 41. But this guy, he goes to prison because he has no driver's license and he drives illegally because he needs to, because he lives on the countryside and he can't afford to move into the city. And he would not get an apartment because he's a convict. So he has no other options because there are no buses or anything, so he needs to drive illegally. And the police see him and they take him because they know he doesn't have a driver's license. And what happens is that when he gets to jail, he can't get a driver's license for 3 years because he's on suspension for that. It's a vicious circle. And every night he spends in prison costs as much as a driver's license in Sweden, right? And the problem is that the government just sees him as doing something wrong, but they don't see what they're doing wrong towards him. And he has accepted that situation. So for him, it's like a lifestyle to go to prison. And instead of just saying like, okay, we won't give you this suspension on getting a driver's license and stop having this issue of treating you as a criminal, we're going to punish you even more, even though it didn't work the 39 times before. And this is going on all the time. And people in privileged countries like Sweden, they don't understand that this is going on. They just see someone who's going to prison and he's a bad person and they don't want to help him. And that also means that they're striving towards harder punishments. And I read a lot of philosophy everywhere that's happening. I read a lot of philosophy when I was in prison, and especially I read Michel Foucault, and he has this book about crime and punishment, where he's arguing that it's more fair to actually have the old punishments where you get sentenced to whipping 10 times, because then you had transparency. So people, you would get your sentence in the streets. People would see that you get whipped 10 times, and they would say, this is wrong. We don't want this. We want less bad sentencing. Then someone invented this concrete cube called prisons and put them, the criminals in prisons instead. And then you stopped having transparency. You don't know what's going on in the prisons, and people don't see what they're kind of doing through the government towards these people. And we call them correctional facilities, but basically what they are is wasting people's time and making people be angry and upset and feeling outside of the system, and no one cares about them anymore. So you're basically making sure that people are going to be even worse criminals. And in Sweden, they brag about that only 85% go back into crime after they've been to prison, which is just insane. And my argument is like the 15% that don't go back in crime are probably just either too old or you didn't catch them yet. So it's not working, and it's not really a transparent system. And it's most of the people I met, few exceptions, were poor people, low educated, and never really fit or got help from the government. And that's generally what I knew before, but now I really understand that as a topic. So instead of spending an insane amount of money on punishing people, you should spend that money on making sure that people don't need to be punished. And I think that's a general rule for all societies.
And about the online, offline?
It was not a problem at all. The only problem was that I couldn't call my family that much. And in the end, I had privileges because I got a lot of attention. I sent letters to different newspapers, like opinion pieces about what's going on inside, and I got a lot of attention. So I was kind of protected by having some sort of social status outside. People didn't agree with the punishment. People didn't agree that I should be locked up. So they were interested in what was going on with me. But so no one, even though it was really fucked up things that happened, I knew that it was for a kind of short time, and that the people working there were kind of scared of doing anything wrong, because I was really pain in the ass for them, especially that everyone knew the day after what they did towards me. So there was this one time where one of the prison guards did something which was, I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was something which actually violated human rights, and I wrote to a newspaper the same day, and the day after it got published. And he got removed from his work and was really upset. And the other prison guards were then kind of backing off. And the problem is that it only happens because I had access to getting that published, but it happens all the time to all of the other people.
They don't have this access.
Exactly. So that's the problem. Like, yeah, it's really, really awful for most people in prison, and it's because no one cares.
Did this time in prison make you change the way you look at your work harder?
No.
Like more important, less important?
No, I think that I was past the Pirate Bay long before that. For me, it was actually weird going there and for something which happened so long ago, and I stopped working with it long ago. But then again, like prison guards came up to me and asked for autographs because they used the Pirate Bay. So some of them called me Jesus because I was there for their sins, as they said, which is also a weird thing. Yeah. So it was a really weird experience that way, but it didn't change me, which is also kind of like a testament to what a failure kind of that system is.
You know that Brazil has the third or fourth biggest carcerário population in the
I've
world.
heard.
And you know that Congress in Brazil is now trying to vote a law which sends below 18.
Yeah, it's 16. Yeah, I heard that.
And it's vast majority of population is in favor of that.
Yeah, but the problem is that they're kind of, it's scaremongering. It's propaganda, and this is exactly the same as in the fight with copyright or whatever fight you have. It's like you're scaring people into thinking this is the best for them, even though it's actually the opposite. Like if you put 16-year-olds in prison, you're gonna make them really fucked up. And I am rather scared of those people when they come out than, anyone else. So if you really want change, you should look openly and study and research what's going to happen, and then you would come to the conclusion you would have other methods of punishing people. It shouldn't be punishment; it should be treatment. And in Norway, for instance, they've set a good example. They have an island outside of Oslo where people go to, and it's kind of a remote location, so they don't need any walls, they don't have any fences or anything. That's where they place murderers in Norway. So they basically work with animals and they live together, and it's totally open. They make food together and they're staying there to become normal. It's a normal environment, which is friendly, instead of putting people into a dangerous environment where you have to protect yourself or whatever. They realize that if you want to do something, you should lead with a good example. And they have the highest rate of people being okay afterwards. And it's actually cheaper than the other options. But there is something with people that when you're scared, you don't want to help someone who is scaring you. Rather, you want to punish them and make sure that they go away.
You told that the two guys who interviewed you for The Guardian, the Swedish guys, Linus and the other one, that when the policeman reached your house and told you were arrested, you pick up your phone and press on an app and encrypted all your computers.
It closed them down.
You closed them down. How do you describe your life online today? Do you still use encrypted communications for all the things? And would you recommend your online lifestyle to other people?
If I would recommend
your online lifestyle to people?
I am probably quite boring. I use I have email, I have Jabber, and I have Twitter. Twitter is the only social media I use because it's not very personal. That's why. So most people would get bored because what happens is that since I'm not on Facebook, all of my friends are on Facebook. Sorry. They're using Facebook for everything, like inviting people to parties. So I never get invited to parties. Even though I'm quite fun at parties, I don't get invited because they don't remember out of 100 people to invite who are not on Facebook. I'm the only one who's not on Facebook. Every now and then, every second month, there's someone who sends me a text message they have a 30th birthday or something, which is really big, and they're really gone through all of their friends. They really want to be there. But otherwise, the general things, you don't get invited to them if you're not on Facebook. So no, I wouldn't recommend it. It's really boring. I have other things that I can do instead. And I meet a lot of people. That's interesting. I travel a lot, so I couldn't go to all of the parties. But then again, for most people, it would be an awful experience of not being part of society if you want to hide yourself. And that's where all the troubles begin, because we're kind of addicted to these services. So if 99% of the world were alcoholics, I think I would rather be one as well than being the only one who's not one. Even though it sounds bad, it's better to fit in than to not fit in.
But do you think you are still being watched and by authorities or things like that?
Yeah, so everyone is. So yes.
You are fitting in this sense.
Yeah, everyone is. Everyone is being monitored. Everyone is being surveillance. They don't. So the good thing with the government and the surveillancers is that they don't discriminate. They're not racist. They don't care about your gender. They just love everyone, and they're listening to everyone. So yes, everyone is being monitored.
But I guess when you were part of the Park Bay, you were more watched than other people would be, or not?
I don't think so. I think that they watch everyone, they store everything, and then when they need the information, they just take it out. So they have it. So when they start watching you, because for some reason you do something which might interest them, they already have all of the information about you when they need it. So it's not about if you're being watched or not, you are being watched. So it's about when you go across the line of when you're interesting enough.
It's the matter is what you do.
Yeah.
But when you say we are fucked up,
Yeah.
you were saying that in this sense, that
Yes.
we have just provided them what they need to grab us when they want to.
Yeah, and it's not only that they're monitoring like fiber cables. It's like Facebook. We're giving out all of the information. We have our romantic relationships online. We have everything. So, and we're giving that to the government. So, like the Stasi, they would love to have that. It was the wet dream of them to have people stupid enough, or I don't know what, to help them surveillance them. And I wouldn't really say stupid. It's just like we are flock animals. Like we want to be part of the society, which is totally normal. So you can't really punish people for being on Facebook or for being on social media and giving out all of the information, because that's what people do in our society. So we need to find something else, next step, that will make sure that is not a problem.
So, do you have any something about what would this next step be? You thought about parties and political involvement.
I think that, first of all, we need to kind of raise awareness, and then we have to have some positive examples, and we also need the negative examples. That's the problem, because we don't have a lot of negative examples. We have ideas about the theoretical negative examples. So when...
You've been in jail. Edward Snowden is in Moscow.
Yeah, but we are not like everyone else, because yet again, you don't see that you're as kind of out there as Edward Snowden is, or for that rather me.
This is for that kind of people.
Yeah, exactly. And that goes like, oh, I didn't know my neighbor was that type of person. Even though they live next door to you, they're going to be, when that happens, they're going to be someone who's a bit out there. But in terms of what to do, I think that making people aware of what's going to happen and showing the bad examples and showing the positive things we could do, for instance, making sure that your government says that these mostly US-based companies are not allowed to keep your data. They don't own the data, even though they're going to have a copy of it. That's the second thing. But first of all, it's about ownership of your data. So, and making sure that they have competitors. So instead of having just Facebook should maybe open up and have an open API for intercommunication between something else, which might be a competitor to Facebook. And when they start opening up and you make an alternative that can operate with Facebook, then people can actually start moving, because then they can still use the users from Facebook. And then we have a kind of real working alternative. Because the problem is that, yeah, as I said before, it's not about the technology, it's about the regulations and the framework and the movement of this information, and in general, the control of it. So I think that I'm always been looking for like this one country to say like, oh, if Facebook wants to be in our country, they have to agree that all of the data belongs to the users. And if the user wants to move it to somewhere else, they have to have an open API. Just saying, no, you can't be here if you don't care about our privacy, our country and our citizens. Go fuck yourself, basically. But no one dares to do that because it's a big step. But hopefully some small country will try to do that, and that will change things. Or for that matter, like Brazil has had like previously in time, Brazil really cared about the issues about internet freedom and so on, and open source and all of these things. Doesn't seem to be exactly the case right now. But maybe one day, like Brazil is big enough to actually say, we don't need these services, we'll make our own. The insane part is like the only one who's fighting the US on terms of that is Russia, with Putin, who's a crazy man. He's the only one crazy enough to actually fight the Americans. So they have like VKontakte, this very big social network in Russia, which is probably bigger than Facebook there, and that's the only competitor that I know of that can actually compete. And I don't want to say that Russia is a good example, but some things is better there insanely enough.
You mentioned that you wouldn't recommend your online lifestyle to anyone, but you still download stuff after being arrested. Do you still download stuff?
I download all the time, yeah.
What, sorry?
I download all the time. If that's yeah. I have lots of TV shows. I follow probably 60, 70 TV shows. I download movies, I download music, I download everything I need.
But then again, who doesn't?
No, yeah, the people streaming them instead.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but you can't stream on airplane yet.
Olha. Se alguém depois de você tem uma aqui na internet.
Which place today, because I think some places like Brazil, the laws is not so aggressive of the virtual punishment or things like that. I say that because Glenn Evans is here, Edward Snowden tried it to come here, things like that, but we don't have the big data and things like that to have services like Grapay, Leaks and things like that. But I would like to know which places today is better with this infrastructure and the laws to virtual punishment that's not so hard.
I think Iceland again is the best example, and basically it comes from the idea that, or from the basis that their economy was totally fucked. They almost went bankrupt, and they were on the brink of bankruptcy for a long time after the bankers screwed the country over. So when they had to reboot from scratch, they decided that they were going to make sure that they have transparency laws so that the banks couldn't do the same thing again. And they started having this big program. And they made something called IMI, which was, to begin with, was called the Icelandic Modern Media Initiative, which then turned into the International Modern Media Initiative, which is the basis for a transparent kind of data haven law. And they've been very focused on privacy, integrity, and accountability from corporations and government. And most people got so screwed over by the government, and especially from the corporations, that they understood that they don't want that. And they're also in a position of like not getting money from someone. So for them, it's not about like doing a deal with the US about data retention or anything, because they didn't get any money from that. So they could just tell everyone to go fuck themselves and do what was needed. So they have a good agenda when it comes to these things. So they're really successful. So I think Iceland would be the best alternative for that.
There's a question from the internet. It's from Diego Rabatoni from Transparencia Hacker. He's asking that, saying that we are trying hard to defend net neutrality in Brazil, but the telecom companies have a big power and chance to approve zero rating as legal. Do you think we, civil society, can subvert the zero rating policy by making its cost get so high that these companies would cut off? Something like use the zero rating and upload and then download high amount of data, torrent over WhatsApp.
I don't know what the zero rating policy is in Brazil, though. So
they explica zero rating?
It's when the ISP make a deal with Facebook or Twitter or WhatsApp, and they can users can use their service without having to pay data for them.
Okay. So it's if you have like a package that you can download 10 gigabytes, that's not counted towards that. Okay.
But just from Facebook.
Yeah, exactly.
It's zero rating for just one player.
Yeah, so it's definitely not net neutrality. I think as I've seen today when we've gone out walking and then seeing the seats, there's an issue with like who owns the cables to begin with. Like your internet providers are very few, and then you don't have like a system where the users own what's called the last mile. So I think a movement towards a more open, decentralized network where you can have an actual choice of internet operator would be better. In most of Europe, when we build fiber networks, we build so that the community owns the actual fiber cables, and they're connected to a central hub, and there you decide which internet provider you want from that place. And since you have the control of your own infrastructure, you're not in the hands of just one operator and have to do what they say. So if one operator would do a deal like this, no one would choose them because you have like an actually functioning market. And I think that instead of fighting for hacks in the system, which is just, it's not changing the system, you should rather probably focus on making a more community-owned network.
It's trying to set up another system, an alternative system.
That could also work. Like Wi-Fi networks are really cheap and they're really fast. You can get like over 2 gigabits over Wi-Fi today for long distances. So that's an alternative in big cities. And then you have start your own network. And many European countries and many cities and basically all Swedish cities, there's community-owned internet providers everywhere. And that is because we understood that we don't want to be in the hands of one operator. So rather say we are 10,000 people, we want an operator to come and work with us because we, as 10,000 people, we have some sort of money and some sort of power, but it's on our terms. And of course, that's going to be really hard to do, but I think it's the only way to actually achieve some sort of actual net neutrality, because you need to be big in numbers, and as individual users of a company, they're not going to care. And doing hacks will just, it's this thing, like if you say that you have a hack to kind of fuck that system up, it's just going to say that, oh, okay, there's a problem that we are not strict enough, so we're going to be even more strict. So they will punish you for that.
Anyone else? So I have one last question. Why did you accept to be at Crypto Wave 2015? Besides of meeting us?
No, I think for me it's like I've been to Brazil before, and it's very inspirational because you're doing everything very different towards what we're doing in Europe. So I take a lot of, I learn a lot when I come here, and I think that a lot of things you're doing right, and I want to take that back as some sort of lesson to people I know in Europe and then work with, and then it's an awesome country and it's awesome people that have great ideas. So.
E aí vamos fechando.
The last time you were here, I guess it was in 2000.
I don't remember which year.
But it wasn't on Italy.
Was it when Michael Jackson died?
Yes, that's what's the last time.
Yes, we were talking about.
Yeah. But anyway, since then we approved a law called Marks Review. I'd like to know what you know about it, and if
not in details a lot, but this country has changed a lot since I was here last time. In terms of focuses on internet freedom, open source movement, which we were so inspired by in Europe. All of the things that was going on that you did not follow the US when it came to regulatory things, and you didn't follow like their business ideas, saying no to Microsoft, all of these things, we were really super inspired by it. And now I see that Brazil is kind of working like every other country on these issues, which is really sad to see. So maybe me coming here could remind you that, okay, you did right previously and now you're doing wrong, and maybe you should go back to doing the thing you did before. If just a few people think that way, I would be happy. But the laws that you're getting now are basically the same laws that we're pushing for in Europe. Even like the people don't want them, but we're going to have them anyhow because of globalization and then corporations that are kind of dictating the terms of our communication. So there's no real big difference. Like all of the world is going to be one big market rather than being like a community, whatever you want to say. So we're going to be very similar in these terms. So that's sad.
And my final one, it's a little one.
Yes, please.
Yeah, please. Do you think has internet gone wrong? Are you a pessimist
I'm not a
this kind of
pessimist, I'm a realist, which every pessimist says. It went totally wrong, yeah. We have built the best infrastructure in the world, super decentralized, and the first thing we did was to build a super centralized system on top of that, which is so bizarre. And then we centralized everything to a few companies in one country that has not a good track record of being nice to anyone else outside of their country, and not even a good track record of their own people. And it's not that I hate the US, I just hate the idea of one country with one person on top that has the legal right against everything everyone is doing in the rest of the world. People don't know this, but even the root service, the DNS system, which controls all domain names in the world, is controlled by, or it can be vetoed by the US Chamber of Commerce. So if you want to like add a new domain name or you want to do changes, they can always veto that. And I don't see the value of that. Why should they interfere with what Brazil or Sweden or Norway wants to do? Because they have no right to do that. But we have, for some reason, given them all of this power, and then we're building our own new infrastructure, all of our new communication on top of that, which that country controls. It's super naive, and it's not going to end well. So yes, the internet has gone totally wrong. Even if nothing bad happens, it's fucked, because we have a system in place which was like one country with one person can have a kill button to turn everything off when he wants to. It's similar to like a nuclear bomb, but instead of like a few countries having them, we have one country that has the nuclear bomb. So we are going to be scared, and we're going to respect them in a different way than we could otherwise. And that's not a fair game.
The question was in the same direction, but I will do another. All this, you think in the future, the internet will be far more, the control is not more for United States, like the nation will control a little bit more internet in this future, or the countries will, I don't know, close your internet. Each country will have your own internet. The future is something like that?
We already have intranets in certain countries, like China and North Korea. Other countries have their own internet, basically. Some of them are for technical reasons, that there are not enough resources, like in terms of IP addresses to go around all the world. So that's a problem. And that's going to be more and more happening if we don't actually realize that we need to go to the next IP system. Even though it's very technical, we need to like change that and update that so we don't build more intranets. I think also like letting the UN govern the internet is not going to be really good either, because the UN has a bad track record of ever coming to the conclusion of anything. Basically, they talk a lot, but nothing happens. Maybe we should have a regulatory board that's similar to the UN, but only focused on infrastructure and nothing else, and try to open up for that. But yeah, I don't really know what's going to happen. I think that people are okay with status quo, so I don't think we are going to have a lot of change, even though we need that.
What's the last one for BitTorrent start to develop a P2P browser? I don't know if you tested it. Do you see this as a way to decentralize the web? Okay, so, or even a step away, or just maybe a single step to decentralize the web?
Well, it could be a way of using that, but it's probably not going to happen, because there is yet again the problem that we are already too centralized in that area. We have the fight between like Chrome and Firefox and Explorer. Explorer lost kind of, Chrome is kind of losing. I don't know, Safari is coming on Macs. There are very few. It's really hard to replace them. I don't think it's going to come from a system like BitTorrent, even though it's probably a great system. They don't have a big enough of a user base, and it's not going to be as fast as direct communication between two actual peers with opening in lots of sockets and so on, very technical. And then again, it's like, who benefits from that? Do we also want that BitTorrent, the company, this American company, controls our browser? I would rather have Mozilla then, like who is doing an open NGO kind of thing to control my browser, even though I don't want anyone to control my browser. So it's not about finding the best option. It's about taking the less bad option right now.
That's I suppose this experiment succeed anyway. But do you think P2P is a way to decentralize the web?
Well, I think the problem is that we're still talking about the web. Maybe we should find something better than the web, because we are very nostalgic when it comes to the internet, even though we haven't used it for that long. Like, we are trying to update the old things to be a little bit different, but we still want that old thing. So we need to find something better than it is today. New technology, be more open, because technology is the evolution of technology is so rapid. Like, we don't even see it. Like 10 years ago, we didn't have like all of these touchscreen phones, all of that. Today, they're kind of old technology, but we don't see the updates that's coming all of the time. And the same goes with it's going to be the same in the future. We're going to laugh about the technology we had today in 10 years, of course, but it's going to be smaller steps, and we're so used to technology being more and more rapidly developed, so we're not going to see the changes as we do today. But we don't really understand how to deal with it, and we don't really understand that instead of like looking for the next thing, thinking that's the iPhone 7 instead of the iPhone 6, rather we should find, okay, what do we need instead of phones? What's going to happen instead of that? Tablets is not going to be the future. Computers is not going to look like they are. Robots are not going to be like human lookalikes. They're going to be totally different. But we don't really think that way. We have our set views of what a computer is, how the internet works, which also limits our thoughts and our abilities to understand what the future is going to hold. Like, even if you look at what's happening in the food industry, like in normal supermarkets, the jobs there will be gone in 15 years in most of the European cities. We're going to have more poets employed than people working in supermarkets, is the actual statistical analysis. That might be a good thing to have that many poets, but the problem is, like in a country of like Norway, there's going to be 5 poets. So there's going to be less than 5 people working in supermarkets. It's because we're going to replace them with robots. And that's not going to be like human lookalikes. It's rather going to be drones that are going to fly your food to your home, which might be awesome. But there's also going to be other implications of, like, we're going to have more unemployment because we don't need as much workspace. We're going to have all of these things. And that's things we should talk about right now. What we're going to do with the time, how we're going to finance these people, what we're going to, how work is going to look like in the future, what are we going to do? And that's things we can't even process right now, because we're thinking about like iPhone 7, the next update of Android, the next Apple Watch coming out, stuff like that. We're very focused on consuming right now. We have no idea about what's going to happen in the future.
That's it.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
I hope I wasn't too boring.